With Skynet's relentless advance, it quickly realised humanity would rather flee than fight, and unfortunately, most of its forces were on the slower side. Well, Skynet had a solution. This was the Moto Terminator, a high speed pursuit machine that could outrun most supercars and chase down escaping humans. The Moto Terminator is quite a unique thing in the Terminator universe, as it's actually pretty logical in its design. It's based off a 2009 Ducati Monster 1100S motorbike, but obviously with added Skynet gadgets and a tune-up. This leads to it being one of the most powerful motorbikes ever produced, and definitely the only one with dual plasma guns. The size of the Moto Terminator is around 2.1 metres in length and 90 centimetres in width, but this is a best guess as it's based off the original bike's dimensions plus the added parts from Skynet. Now this size means it's easily able to weave through abandoned vehicles and obstructions that line its path without worrying about collisions, and its weight would be no more than 260 kilograms. This is about 100 kilograms more than the original bike's weight, but as I said, many additions to the bike were added, so obviously an increased weight. It also comes with new large road wheels that seem extremely durable and capable of going off-road at slower speeds, and the CPU for the Moto Terminator sits where the seat for the rider would normally go. This is all done with a very low profile, which seems to emphasise its small size to make it harder to hit, but also to keep it aerodynamic so that its shape doesn't reduce its speed. The main advantage of this design is its speed, and Skynet tuned up the original engine, which produced 95 horsepower, to an unknown amount, but it gave a maximum speed of over 200 miles per hour. Now this is its straight line speed, and obviously maximum speed on a good flat surface, but as it was patrolling around it would be at much lower speeds, waiting for a disturbance to attract its attention. It also could go from 0 to 100 extremely quick, around 2.5 seconds, meaning the Moto Terminator's acceleration, combined with a high speed, allowed it to catch any human vehicle pretty much. And even if someone was driving a supercar, they would be very unlikely to be able to maintain maximum speed for long, at which point the Moto Terminators would catch up and remove them from the road in a very violent fashion. The reason the Moto Terminators were the masters of the road wasn't simply the speed, it was the advanced AI brain, being able to do insane manoeuvres at high speeds, as we see in the pursuit in Terminator Salvation, where the Moto Terminator dodges a car that's been hurled into the air due to the truck's dozer blade launching it high up in the sky. But a quick dip and spin and the Moto Terminator is back on pursuit with barely any speed lost. Now this presents the ability to overcome pretty much any obstruction within reason, as it can clearly predict the paths of debris and the exact path it must take to get through obstructions in its way. And we see this on the heads-up display, which shows collision avoidance system and indicators for pathfinding through dangerous terrain. This also puts pressure on humans who are being chased as they're trying to keep up at maximum speed, dodging obstacles, but obviously they're not as skilled as a Moto Terminator, and most likely they would crash, saving the Terminators a job. Even with fast reactions, we see a young Kyle Reese take out a Moto Terminator by throwing a can of oil in its path. He then shoots it with a shotgun, causing it to explode, and the oil slick knocked the Moto Terminator down when it hits a car and it goes offline for a short period. So quickly deployable countermeasures such as oil slicks or caltrops could take them out. So if anyone has James Bond's Aston Martin handy, it would be really useful in the future war. Obviously, a mix of oil slicks, smoke screens and machine guns would be perfect for fighting Moto Terminators. The Moto Terminator's brain has a highly aggressive nature to it. It would make sense that Skynet did this, as they're very cheap and cost efficient to produce, and prioritising catching and killing the target over their own safety seems very reasonable. And even though capable of hunting alone, a pack mentality is definitely present, and the more Moto Terminators there are in the group, the more dangerous they are. With their advanced coordination, they don't get in each other's way, they actually multiply each other's effectiveness. All this data is caught by the sensors mounted on the top of the Moto Terminator's body. Its red sensors can see in front of it and behind it, but the priority is the focus on the pursuit and the kill. Now this gives it some pretty big blind spots, and it's highly unlikely anyone is going to be hunting Moto Terminators, and if they are, they need to be packing heavy firepower, or it would be a fool's errand. And we see the Moto Terminator in the Terminator Salvation movie respond to John Connor's speaker playing music, which proves they also have audio sensors capable of picking up noise from miles away. A huge glaring flaw is seen in the Terminator Salvation movie as John Connor disables a Moto Terminator with a tripwire trap, and then reprograms one very speedily and then uses it to ride to Skynet Central. And John even removes one of the Moto Terminator's sensors, which he is able to use to unlock Skynet doors, a bit like an access card. So this shows there's very little security in terms of the Moto Terminator's AI brain, and it's quite a big problem for Skynet. I thought there would be some kind of booby trap, obviously some kind of explosive, or some massive shutdown mechanism, but Obviously, plot armour always overrides them, but still, a massive flaw by Skynet there. And its manoeuvrability and speed ties into its tactical flexibility. The Moto Terminator is capable of doing basic patrols where it travels what's left of humanity's road networks. It could also act as a quick reaction force against resistant strikes and fleeing humans. It could do scouting for ground forces where the enemy might have anti-aircraft weapons, which would limit aerial reconnaissance. And also, it technically could be rode by a T-Series Terminator, as we see in the concept art. Imagine a T-800 having a Moto Terminator stashed nearby its area of operations, and once it completed its mission, and all hell is breaking loose, it jumps on the Terminator bike and rides away to its next objective. It'd also be pretty damn badass to see that, so if anyone's writing a future war movie, Moto Terminator being ridden by a T-800 is, it's got to be done. The Moto Terminator also has a novel way of being deployed to the battlefield, with the large bipedal harvester hunter killer carrying two as a deployable pursuit force. This was a massive shock to me as it was a pretty smart design, and it gives larger hunter killers a smart support choice on the battlefield. And the fact that they were held in a heavily armoured chassis like the harvester gives them protection against heavy weapons fire that can be neutralised before they are deployed to hunt down the fleeing human forces. Once deployed, the Moto Terminator was expected to take fire when pursuing targets, but its main defence is speed and manoeuvrability, as its armour and durability is very low. As you can see, the only areas that seem to have armour are the sensor, and this is very thin and light. There are lots of exposed weak points on the frame, and it's only designed to take light, small arms. Think handguns and shotguns, where rifles and higher caliber weapons would easily cause damage with sustained fire. And we see a Moto Terminator be blown to bits by a 40mm grenade launcher in Terminator Salvation. These machines were built to hunt and kill quickly, and they weren't for sustained battle, and if they went up against armoured vehicles with mounted weapons, they would go from hunter to hunted very quickly. Now when the Moto Terminators get into range of their targets, they're armed with two plasma emitters. Now this is an interesting wording because it's not miniaturized plasma cannon, it's not plasma gun, it's plasma emitters. Now in the film, they don't do much damage because of plot armour, and the truck they're shooting at just seems to survive multiple hits. Even when one hits the tyres of the truck and it bursts into flames, it doesn't really do anything. But I personally think if they are miniaturized plasma cannons, which is basically what they are, they should be able to cut through the truck and the human in a single blast. So for ignoring plot armour, I actually think they're pretty potent weapons, but unfortunately in Terminator Salvation we don't see the Moto Terminators fire them much. I think we see them fire the weapons about 3 or 4 times, it's pretty limited. So obviously if anyone has any more information on plasma emitters, please feel free to tell me. But right now I'm going to go with miniaturized plasma cannons, and lore-wise they would be a lot more potent than in the film. Now the rate of fire seems fairly low, and the recharge between the shots is about 10 seconds. Now this kind of makes sense as the Moto Terminator is quite compact. I don't think there would be the power generator strong enough to keep them firing at a rapid fire pace, whereas if these run something like, a larger machine, let's say a tank or a walker, they would be able to fire, hundreds of shots per minute easily. Now the range on the plasma emitters also seems quite low. We don't see the Terminators fight enough to truly judge it. But in the Salvation universe, plasma tech is still fairly limited, and it might be as simple as Skynet has not been able to miniaturize the plasma technology enough to make it as effective as conventional weapons on the smaller weapons platforms. I think Skynet would have actually been better off equipping the Moto Terminators with something like a 50 caliber machine gun with armor-piercing ammunition, and it would have been able to carry 1,000 rounds pretty easily on that structure, and that's more than enough to tear through like light vehicles and things that civilians would also be fleeing in. So I think, conventional weapons would have been better for the Moto Terminators. And in the original concept art, we see one with 2 kind of miniguns or rotary cannons, which I do think looks far better. But concept art, unfortunately, doesn't always get to the movie. The power supply for the Moto Terminator is never mentioned, but it makes sense that it's running off a gasoline engine and that everything is running off the kinetic energy and power it produces. Though Skynet would have tuned this engine up far higher spec than what humans produce, which would lead to increased power and far better fuel efficiency, which means logistically the Moto Terminators would be able to go for hundreds of miles before refueling. But the plasma emitters would have their own supply of power and ammo. This is probably why they have such a limited rate of fire, as there simply isn't enough juice for the machines to run these at rapid fire, as I mentioned earlier. Now the production of the Moto Terminator is very logistics friendly. The fact it's based off human produced bikes with Skynet upgrades would make it very easy to use pre-existing factories for motorbike production to make these, and most likely stockpiled and salvaged motorbikes could be converted. And with most parts being pre-existing with only a few being advanced technology, it means production is simple and streamlined. And a full-size factory could produce hundreds of units a week, and with most materials being of the more conventional variety, it keeps the more advanced stuff for Skynet's favoured sons, the T-Series. There is a snow-based version called the Snowminator. Yeah, I know, a very clever name, but it is what it is. And these are based off snowmobiles, so they use tracks instead of wheels, but the design is very similar. But one change does stick out to me. Instead of plasma emitters, they're armed with some kind of fletchet launcher, something like a very large shotgun style weapon, which I think is a great choice as it's fantastic against human targets, but not machines. And these snowmanators were encountered by resistance fighters in Alaska who were on a mission to destroy a major logistics supply train nicknamed the Skynet Express, which I'll also cover in a later video. I think the Moto Terminator is one of those rare machine designs that we can actually imagine working in the real world and not being completely off the walls crazy sci-fi. And maybe with the advance of drone technology, one day we may see something similar on the battlefields. Let's just hope it's on our side. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. It's nice to do a machine out of Terminator Salvation, as you know, it's not one of the most loved films like Terminator 1 or 2, but I definitely think it's good as it does show us a lot more of the future war. Anyway, thanks for watching everyone, and as always, you guys have a beautiful evening.